Golden Age Hollywood, a world of dazzling lights and stars that shone brighter than anyone else. But behind the perfect smiles and glamorous red carpets, dark secrets lurked. Burt Lancaster, a legendary screen icon, once revealed the 13 most ruthless actors of that era. They were famous not only for their talent but also for the fear they inspired among their colleagues. Let's uncover the faces and shocking stories that few dare to mention in Hollywood history. Elizabeth Taylor always commanded attention, a mixture of awe and fear surrounding her presence. I remember the time she was filming Cleopatra in Rome in 1962, the set tense with anticipation. Just because a fellow actress wore a dress the same color, Taylor locked herself in her dressing room, refusing to let anyone in. 14 hours passed as the crew waited for her to regain composure before filming could continue. When the director called for action again, she hurled a glass at his face, leaving the set in stunned silence. This was not mere impulsiveness but a display of control and power. Taylor was more than a star, she was a queen who manipulated, commanded, and influenced everything around her. During her marriage to Richard Burton, she was not merely a wife but the guiding force behind every decision, leveraging her influence to dominate Hollywood. Her unions with Mike Todd and Burton were never simple love stories, they were battles of wit and strategy, where Taylor skillfully asserted her authority, secured wealth, and orchestrated every outcome. It's impossible not to be captivated by both the allure and the intensity of her persona. Elizabeth Taylor remains a legend, a complex tapestry of ambition, emotion, and power, where love and ambition intertwine, and all of Hollywood bows to her presence. Kirk Douglas was a Hollywood icon with a legacy of unforgettable roles, yet behind that fame existed a man who expertly wielded power. He didn't just decide who got roles, he influenced directors and producers at every level. One notable story involves Lisa Avery, a young actress removed from a major project simply for declining a private dinner with Douglas. This was no coincidence, it demonstrated the extent to which he used his influence to control those around him. Throughout his career, Douglas transformed his reputation into a tool of authority, creating an environment where every action had to align with his will. Anyone daring to resist often faced severe consequences, from losing career opportunities to being placed in precarious situations with no protection. Every glance, every word carried weight, forcing colleagues and co-stars to measure every move. Kirk Douglas was more than a star, he embodied subtle power, where fear and influence intertwined, compelling Hollywood to tread carefully. Meanwhile, Natalie Wood, with her delicate appearance, possessed a sharp strategic mind. Every decision she made was calculated, causing those around her to proceed with caution. Hollywood was never just about lights and glamour, it was a world where power, ambition, and personal strategy intersected, and figures like Kirk Douglas and Natalie Wood constantly reminded everyone that survival in the industry required careful deliberation. Natalie Wood was known for her delicate beauty and profound, soulful eyes, yet behind that image lay a woman of ambition and calculated strategy. She mastered the art of using emotion to influence and control, sometimes causing entire sets to pause for hours because of a deliberate action or gesture. On one occasion, she effectively removed a colleague from a major project simply due to personal conflict, showing she would employ any tactic to achieve her aims. Her cunning extended to orchestrating events on set to force others into compliance. Once, she pretended to faint during filming, halting production for 10 hours. This was not an impulsive act, but a carefully planned strategy that compelled producers and co-stars to yield. No one dared to oppose her, fearing damage to their careers and future opportunities in Hollywood. Natalie's sudden death on a yacht in 1981 remains shrouded in mystery, but many believe it carried consequences from the schemes and calculated relationships she left behind. Just weeks before her passing, she was reported to have threatened a close friend to ensure obedience. The sea may have hidden her body, but the marks of her influence and the complexity of her power remain etched in Hollywood's memory. Her departure closed a tragic chapter, where ambition, authority, and personal maneuvering intertwined, leaving a legacy both captivating and haunting. Mickey Rooney was celebrated for his cheerful and friendly image on screen, yet his private life told a very different story. Beneath the friendly facade lay a man who thrived on control and manipulation. He often humiliated supporting actors over minor mistakes, such as hairstyle or costume choices, leaving the set in tense silence, as if all their efforts were meaningless under his watchful eye. His influence extended beyond the set and into his personal life. Those close to him, particularly his wives, lived under constant pressure and fear. Burt Lancaster noted that Rooney turned his spouse into a figure of total obedience, both physically and mentally, forcing them to follow every demand. His marriages were not tales of romance but tragedies dominated by power and manipulation, leaving victims drained and unable to resist. One incident in 1967 stood out, when Rooney struck his wife on set for falling behind schedule. The act left not only physical wounds but lasting emotional scars. Rooney's relationships became a series of stories marked by abuse, manipulation, and control, leaving deep psychological impacts on those closest to him. Under the stage lights, he shone as a bright star, but in the shadows of his private life, he left a trail of pain and haunting memories, making Hollywood remember him not only for his talent but also for the hidden tragedies behind the glamour. Marilyn Monroe is remembered as an icon of charm and talent in Hollywood, but her fame concealed a darker side few ever saw. Behind the stage lights was a woman who knew how to use her vulnerability and image to control and manipulate others. During the filming of Some Like It Hot in 1959, she frequently disappeared from the set without notice, forcing the crew to halt production for hours. The waiting was exhausting and left everyone powerless, having to hope Monroe would return so they could continue their work. Monroe's manipulation went beyond disrupting schedules. She skillfully leveraged relationships with powerful figures to make people act according to her wishes. In 1961, when she began a secret relationship with producer Jack Warner, she used this influence to dictate casting and co-star decisions. When Warner suggested she work with another male actor, Monroe caused an emotional crisis, forcing him to make choices solely in her favor. The result was chaos on set and many suffered setbacks simply because of her ambition and scheming. Marilyn Monroe exemplified the power of fame and allure, but also serves as a reminder that Hollywood is not only about glamour and lights, it is a place where power, ambition, and personal strategy intersect. She left a legacy of admiration intertwined with lasting consequences, ensuring that everyone who encountered her could never forget the influence and cunning behind her public persona. Errol Flynn was remembered as the epitome of charm and sophistication, but behind his heroic screen roles lay a life shadowed by dark scheming. Flynn captivated Hollywood with his smile and charisma, yet according to Burt, that charm masked dangerous and ruthless behavior. He hosted decadent parties where drugs, alcohol, and staged acts of violence intertwined, leaving his victims powerless, silenced, and fully controlled by his wealth and influence. He also knew how to wield his power to avoid legal consequences. When arrested for drug dealings, he quickly leveraged his connections in the film industry to secure release, continuing his criminal acts without accountability. The women in his life were often treated as tools to satisfy desire, used and discarded once they no longer served his purpose. To Burt, Flynn was more than a crude or violent star, he embodied supreme power intertwined with sin and exploitation. His life proved that Hollywood glamour could conceal terrifying darkness, where seemingly great figures harbored horrifying secrets, ready to destroy anyone who stood in their way. The heroic image on screen was merely a facade for a life of scheming, deception, and cruelty, leaving a legacy that made Hollywood remember Flynn not just for his talent but for the dark stories he left behind. Spencer Tracy is remembered for his outstanding performances and warm smile on screen, but his private life held hidden bursts of anger that few dared to confront. In the dressing room, he turned alcohol into a tool of control, spreading fear to those around him. He did not drink merely to get drunk, he drank to exert pressure, forcing colleagues to comply with his will and asserting his authority. A notable incident occurred during the filming of Judgment at Nuremberg, when he smashed a bottle of alcohol on the makeup table over a minor mistake by the makeup artist. This act was more than impulsive anger, it was a clear message: anyone who erred would face consequences. No one dared to resist, and his power permeated the set, making everyone cautious with every step. Tracy also employed subtler methods to manipulate and coerce co-stars. He could appear gentle with a smile, only to follow it with threats, sometimes even feigning self-harm to force compliance. These actions created a suffocating atmosphere where every gesture and word had to be measured to avoid becoming the target of his hidden fury. Burt Lancaster noted that Spencer Tracy was not merely a talented star, he was a man who used his power and influence to manipulate, intimidate, and crush anyone who opposed him. Under the bright lights of Hollywood, Tracy was a legend of performance, but in the shadows of private life, he embodied ruthless authority and fear. James Stewart, a symbol of integrity on screen, harbored a side few ever saw. Audiences admired him for his kind and honest characters, yet according to Burt Lancaster, Stewart was a judgmental and calculating man who used subtle tactics to maintain influence. During filming, he quietly noted every minor mistake of his co-stars and colleagues, later passing these observations to the director, leaving everyone around him anxious and uneasy. His cruelty became even more apparent in 1957, when he refused to act alongside a black actor. Without openly protesting, he used the pretext of needing to review the script to mask his true intention, forcing others to acquiesce silently. Stewart went further, fabricating documents to accuse anyone who dared oppose him, turning a single forged paper into a weapon capable of ruining reputations and careers. No one dared speak up, fearing public shame or lost opportunities in the industry. Without shouting or making overt threats, Stewart could sit silently in a room, and everyone immediately felt unworthy to exist in his presence. To Burt, James Stewart was proof that power can hide beneath a benign appearance, and silence can be more dangerous than any outburst. He was a screen legend, yet in the shadows of Hollywood, Stewart was cunning, calculating, and ready to destroy anyone who stood in his way. Henry Fonda, revered in Hollywood for iconic roles in The Grapes of Wrath and 12 Angry Men, held an invisible power few could perceive. Burt Lancaster described Fonda as a master manipulator, who didn't rely on violence or shouting but spread fear through cold silence, capable of inflicting profound psychological harm on anyone who dared oppose him. Fonda's family, particularly Jane, grew up under the strict shadow of a father who never praised or protected, only used control and authority to enforce compliance. The absence of genuine affection left deep psychological scars, making those closest to him live in constant fear, unsure of their every action. His invisible authority extended throughout Hollywood. He pressured colleagues into situations so tense that some felt desperate, even contemplating self-harm just to illustrate their powerlessness against his subtle influence. Fonda didn't need to act aggressively. A silent glance or a brief comment could shatter confidence, reputations, and morale. According to Burt, Henry Fonda proved that power is not always maintained through respect or admiration but through cunning manipulation and quiet fear. Beneath the Hollywood spotlight, he was a legend of performance. In the shadows of private life, he was a father, a colleague, a man so calculating that anyone in his orbit had to tread carefully. Jane Fonda, with her gentle appearance and angelic eyes, wields an astonishingly subtle power of manipulation. According to Burt Lancaster, her strength did not come from violence or direct threats but from psychological control, from the ability to pressure others through public attention and influence. On one film set, she demanded the dismissal of a cameraman simply because he was a devout Christian and disagreed with her radical feminist views. When her demand was denied, she threatened to hold a press conference, publicly accusing discrimination, plunging everyone on set into extreme tension. Lancaster recalled Jane saying plainly that anyone not on her side was opposing justice. All she needed was a microphone, a crowd, and the influence of her fame to control, harass, and remove anyone who dared dissent. These strategies did more than exert psychological pressure, they pushed colleagues into socially and financially precarious situations, where public shaming or lost career opportunities loomed. Jane Fonda's power was the power of design, calculation, and persuasive skill. She used extreme ideals and her fame as tools, forcing people to choose sides, obey her will, or face carefully orchestrated consequences. Under Hollywood's spotlight, Jane Fonda is a star, but in the shadows, she is a master manipulator, exerting control and fear through intellect and influence. Bing Crosby, with his calm demeanor and enchanting voice, always gave the world the impression of a composed and charming figure. Yet behind closed doors, a different world existed, a place ruled by power and cruelty. Burt Lancaster recorded that Bing used his cold, piercing gaze to instill fear within his own household. Those sharp, steel-like eyes kept his family living in constant anxiety, where every action was judged and punished. A haunting memory Burt shared described Bing forcing his son to stand outside in freezing weather, shirtless, over a poor grade, insisting the boy learn the lesson of failure. The abuse did not stop at psychological torment. Bing also used violence and threats to dominate his children and relatives. Gary Crosby, his son, confessed, "I would rather be the child of anyone, even a criminal, than of my father." This admission exposed the destructive force Bing wielded in his own home. The consequences of this cruelty became painfully clear in Gary's life. Lancaster portrayed Gary as a distorted reflection of Bing, shaped by a childhood filled with violence. As an adult, Gary repeated these patterns, abusing girlfriends, clashing violently over trivial matters, and even destroying property, such as smashing a director's windshield in a dispute. He was also accused of drug abuse, involvement in prostitution, and assaults on innocent people. Lancaster concluded that Gary never learned love, the only language he understood was fear, a legacy imparted by his father. Gary's story stands as a chilling reminder that violence, control, and terror can pass from one generation to the next, turning victims into replicas of their tormentors. And if this story unsettles you, prepare for Henry Fonda, a man once seen as the epitome of virtue, yet beneath the modest exterior lies a cold, ruthless heart few could imagine. Joan Crawford was admired as a star on the silver screen, but her private life held shadows few dared to glimpse. Unlike the gentle mother image often portrayed, Crawford became infamous for using violence as a tool to control her children and maintain authority within her household. Her daughter, Christina, endured harsh punishments, from severe slaps to being struck with a coat hanger. On one occasion, Joan snapped a comb in her hand and coldly declared that pain was the first lesson of a woman, leaving everyone around stunned. Crawford's cruelty extended beyond physical abuse. She wielded psychological pressure, manipulation, and sometimes fear to dominate those close to her. According to Burt Lancaster, she was not merely a film icon but a woman who instilled fear, turning her home and career into instruments for maintaining power. Every action, from icy expressions to commanding decisions, kept others in line, leaving no room for defiance. Joan Crawford exemplifies a Hollywood where glamour often hid ruthless individuals willing to do whatever it took to protect their position. Behind the smiles and the red carpet glow lay a personality that was powerful, cold, and unforgiving, leaving anyone who came close to her wary and apprehensive. Lucille Ball, the symbol of American joy and laughter, possessed a smile that captivated the entire nation. Yet, according to Burt Lancaster, when the lights went out, that smile became a sharp weapon, used to manipulate and control those around her. Behind the glamour of Desilu, she was not only a brilliant producer but also a master of psychological manipulation. Every action, every smile, every gesture of her staff was meticulously recorded in her notebook, as if the smallest detail could determine someone's fate. One screenwriter had to rewrite an entire script within 24 hours, and Lucille called him into a meeting, laughed, and threw the draft directly in his face. Others watched in horror, knowing that even the slightest mistake could cost them their job instantly without explanation. Her ruthlessness went far beyond mental games. Lucille reportedly installed hidden microphones to monitor staff, identifying loyalty and betrayal, and those who opposed her faced consequences that left lasting fear. Under the dazzling lights of Hollywood, Lucille Ball created a world where a smile could save a person or crush them completely. Everyone had to tread carefully, speak cautiously, because her power and cunning extended far beyond the stage lights. Behind that bewitching laugh lay a cold, calculating, and unyielding mind, turning Hollywood into a place both mesmerizing and terrifying. Burt Lancaster did not hesitate to reveal the darkest secrets of Hollywood, lifting the glittering curtain so we could see the shadows and ruthlessness behind the smiles on the screen. His stories are more than warnings, they are reminders that power, fame, and glamour often hide dangerous truths that few dare to admit. Looking back at these people once admired by the whole world, we are forced to ask ourselves, who was truly the most ruthless? Who left the deepest mark, not on the screen, but on the minds and lives of those around them? Share your thoughts below the video, join the conversation about the hidden darkness of Hollywood, and if you want to continue exploring these dramatic, thrilling, and emotional stories, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss a single chapter.